Did you know that 99% of Christians never heard of the war that happened before the creation of the world? I'm not talking about Lucifer's rebellion. This everyone knows. I'm talking about such a devastating, controversial battle that it was literally erased from sacred history. What if I told you that this war was not about pride or power, but about you? About humanity should or should not exist? About if imperfect creatures like us deserve the right to choose between good and evil? In 1947, along with the Dead Sea manuscripts, archaeologists discovered fragments of a text that the early church tried to hide for almost 2,000 years. These fragments speak of Raguel, the angel of justice, which led an angelic faction against the divine plan of creating beings with free will. But here is what will shock you. This was not a rebellion for pride. It was a rebellion for love. Raguel and his followers believed that creating beings capable of sinning would be divine cruelty. They fought to protect us from existing. During the next 15 minutes, I will show you biblical, archaeological, and historical evidence of this lost war. You will find out why it has been hidden, who really won, and most importantly, how this battle is still being fought today, in your life, in your mind, in your soul. And I assure you, once you know the truth about the lost war, you will never look at Genesis 1:1 in the same way. You will never question why God has allowed evil, and it will never doubt your divine purpose again. But to understand this war, we first need to go back to a moment before the time ... Imagine for a moment that there is nothing. There is no light, there is no darkness, no space, no time. There is only divine eternity and heavenly counsel. Angels of different hierarchies, seraphims, cherubim, archangels, gathered in the presence of the Most High. It is in this timeless context that we find our first biblical track. In Job 38, 4-7, God asks, "Where were you when I founded the earth?" Opening parenthesis ... closing parenthesis, when the stars of the Alva together sang, and all the children of God rejoiced. Note something crucial. All the children of God rejoiced. But we know that not all angels rejoiced with creation. So what happened between this moment of universal joy and the rebellions we know? The answer is hidden in the 1 Enoch apocryphal book, specifically in chapters 20-22, where we find a list of 7 archangels. The 7th is Raguel, whose name means friend of God or revenge of God. Your function? Punish angels that transgress the divine law. But here is the paradox. How did the angel responsible for punishing heavenly transgressions become the leader of the greatest pre-creation transgression? The answer lies in Aramaic fragments discovered in Qumran Cave 4, which speak of a council of 7 convened before the foundation of the world. These fragments, catalogued as 4Q203, mention a heavenly debate about the decree of free will. In Aramaic, Jarada di Ritha Hafshitha. Raguel, according to these texts, argued that giving free will to beings created from dust would be an abomination that would bring eternal tears to the divine throne. This explains an anomaly in Ezekiel 28-15, where he says about the fallen cherub, "Perfect age is in your paths, since the day you were created, until you found iniquity in you." The Hebrew word for iniquity here is ola, not common sin, but specifically injustice or perversion of justice. What if this injustice wasn't proud, but misdirected compassion? And if Raguel, in his search for perfect justice, could not accept that God would create beings intended for suffering and the possibility of eternal condemnation? Syriac texts of the 4th century speak of a first fall prior to the fall of Lucifer. They describe a war not of pride against humility, but of justice against mercy, a protection against freedom. And this war has left marks that we can track to this day. brands in the very structure of reality, in the nature of evil. And why salvation needed to be so traumatic. But there is something even more disturbing, evidence that this war has never really ended. Now I will show you the 3 clues that biblical archaeologists have used to rebuild this lost war. And I warn you, each track will shake something you thought you knew about the origins of evil. First track, the anomaly of divine names in Genesis 1 and 2. In chapter 1, God is called exclusively Elohim, majestic plural that indicates divine counsel. But in chapter 2, it changes to Yhweh Elohim, God's personal name. Why? Because Genesis 1 describes the creation approved by the heavenly council after the war. Genesis 2 shows God personally forming man, assuming individual responsibility for the controversial decision. Second track, the mysterious we of Genesis 1:26. Let us make man to our image. Traditional interpretation says it is the Trinity speaking. But old rabbinic texts suggest something different. God specifically consulting angels who remained loyal after the lost war. Midrash Rabbah records, when God wanted to create the man, he consulted the angels of the ministry. Some said, be created. Others said, don't be created. But this debate came after angels were already expelled for opposing creation. Third track, the wise snake of Genesis 3. Everyone assumes that it was Satan, but what if it were Raguel, the angel of justice, making a last attempt to protect humanity? Think, the serpent did not lie about the consequences of eating from the fruit. He said they would not die on the day to eat, and technically it was right. He said they would become like God, knowing good and evil. And Genesis 3:22 confirms that this really happened. What if the temptation at Eden was Raguel's last move? Not to destroy humanity, but to force God to admit that creating beings with free will was a mistake. To prove that humans with moral knowledge become so corrupt that creation itself would be cruelty? The Book of the Jubilees, chapter 5, speaks of angels who cried for the children of men before the flood. They did not cry with common sadness, but the kind of lament that has been proven in a terrible discussion. But here is what Raguel did not predict, that God already had a plan of redemption, that the cruelty of creating beings capable of sinning would be overcome by the madness of becoming one of these beings to save them. This explains why salvation had to be so radical. It was not just about forgiving sins, it was about validating the divine decision to create us. It was about proving that Raguel was wrong, that freedom is worth more than protection, that true love requires the possibility of rejection. And here is the part that will shiver you. This war still echoes in your life today, ... But what does this millennial war have to do with you today? All because this battle between protection and freedom, between security and choice, is still being fought in your mind, in your heart, in your daily life. How many times have you felt like Raguel, looking at suffering in the world and questioning, why does God allow this? Seeing people who love making destructive choices and thinking, is it better if they didn't have that freedom? Every father has experienced this. Seeing a child getting hurt by learning to walk and having to resist. The impulse of carrying him in his lap forever. Every educator has already struggled between giving ready answers or letting the student find out for himself, even though he knew he will make a mistake. And if I told you that when you fight these issues, are you experiencing the same dilemma that divided heaven before creation? Are you feeling the echo of the lost war in your own soul? Think about your relationships. How many times have you tried to control people you love for their own good? How many times have you frustrated because someone you want to protect insists on making choices that will hurt you? This is the spirit of Raguel operating in you. The voice that whispers, if you really love this person, it wouldn't let it have this dangerous freedom. It is the same voice that argued in the heavenly council that creating humans with free will would be a divine cruelty. But Jesus demonstrated the opposite principle. In Matthew 19:16-22, when the rich man rejected his eternal life offer, Jesus did not run after him, did not force, did not manipulate. And Jesus, looking at him, loved him and let him go. This is divine love, loving someone enough to give her the terrible and precious right to reject you. This is why God has won the lost war, not with strength, but proving that true love always chooses freedom, even when this freedom can result in pain. So here is your challenge. The next time you want to control someone for her good, remember Raguel. Remember that powerful angels fought a war to protect us from freedom of choice, and that God considered our freedom more valuable than our security. And when you feel tempted to question why God allows evil in the world, remember, He has answered this question with your own life. The cross is the final response to the objection of Raguel. It is God saying, yes, creating you resulted in suffering. So much suffering that I came to carry you myself. Stop a moment and think. Where in your life are you trying to be Raguel? Where are you confusing control with love, protection with true care? Because here is the truth that will change everything. You have not been created to be protected. You are created to be free. And that leads us to a conclusion that will transform how you see your purpose in the universe. So here is what we discovered. Even before the first words, "There is light," there was a war over you. Angels debated if you deserved to exist. Raguel, the angel of justice, led a rebellion of compassion, arguing that it would be more merciful never to create you than to give you the terrible freedom to choose between heaven and hell. But God fought for His right to exist. He fought for His right to choose. He fought for His right to be truly free, even if it meant that you could use this freedom to reject it. And you know what is the final proof that God has won this war? You are watching this video. You are thinking, questioning, choosing. His own ability to doubt, to seek truth, to indignate with injustice. This is inheritance of divine victory in lost war. I challenge you. The next time you are tempted to complain about having to make difficult choices, remember that angels have fought a war to get you this burden. Next time you question why God allows suffering, remember that the alternative was that you never exist. If this revelation impacted you as much as I impacted me when I discovered these fragments years ago, I need you to do 3 things. First, enjoy this video. It is not about numbers. It is about declaring that your freedom matters, that your existence has value, that you are on the side of God in this ancient war. Second, share with someone who is struggling with doubts about the purpose of life or questioning why God allows suffering. They need to know that their existence was not an accident. It was a victory won in battle. Third, tell me in the comments, how does this perspective change your vision about your difficult choices? How will you live knowing that angels literally fought for your right to be free? Remember, you are not a cosmic accident. You are the result of a divine victory. You are living proof that God has considered your freedom more valuable than your own tranquility. Use this freedom wisely. Angels fought for her. The lost war was overcome. Now it's up to you to decide what to do with this victory.